The first episode of House of the Dragon Season 1 is titled The Heirs of the Dragon. The episode starts with a peek into the past. As the first century of the Targaryen dynasty ended, the Targaryens were at the peak of their powers. With 10 adult dragons, they had power, unseen and unheard of before. However, the health of the old king, Heirs, was deteriorating. His 60-year reign was considered a peaceful and prosperous reign. However, both his sons had tragically died in an accident, which left his succession in doubt. So, in the year 101, the king called a great council meeting to choose his heir. Over 1,000 lords from all over the kingdom arrived at Harrenhal, the capital. Out of 14 succession claims that were heard, only 2 were really considered. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the king's oldest descendant, and her younger cousin, Prince Viserys Targaryen, the king's oldest male descendant. In the end, the council chose Viserys as the successor and the Prince of Dragonstone, while Rhaenys was snubbed due to her being a woman. The king called the council because he didn't want a war to ensue over his succession, because the king already knew that only thing that could bring down the House of the Dragon was itself. Fast forward to the 9th year of King Viserys' reign, we see his daughter, Rhaenyra Targaryen, riding on dragonback and whooshing amongst the clouds around the city. She lands and is greeted by Alicent Hightower, her friend and also the daughter of the Hand of the King, Lord Otto Hightower. She goes to see her mother, the Queen, who is pregnant with the king's second child. Rhaenyra tells her mother that she'd rather ride out to battle on horseback with all the men than slave away at the pregnancy bed, after her mother tells her that soon it'll be her turn to lay in her place. She is called upon by her father, who is heading over the council meeting. During the meeting, Lord Corlys Velaryon, who is husband to Rhaenys Targaryen, tries to bring the attention of the king towards the looming threat of the Triarchy, who are terrorizing the bordering ports of the kingdom. But the king's hand shuts him down. Instead, the topic of the discussion turns towards the tournament being held to celebrate the coming of the king's newborn child. The king tells everyone that he's sure that it'll be a boy this time who'll be the heir to this throne. Afterwards, Rhaenyra goes to meet her uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, in secret, and finds him sitting on the Iron Throne. They start conversing in High Valyrian, and Daemon gifts her a necklace made out of Valyrian steel and puts it around her neck. Daemon tells Rhaenyra that he's here for the tournament, being held in the celebration of the king's heir, which as of now is him. Rhaenyra reminds him that the king has a child on the way, and she hopes that it'll be a boy. The king goes to visit the queen in her chambers, where she finds her relaxing in the bathtub. She tells him that this is the only place where she can find some relaxation in this miserable pregnancy. She tells the king that Rhaenyra has already declared for a sister and has even named her Visenya. The queen tells the king that this might be the last time, as she's already had 5 miscarriages and unsuccessful pregnancies in twice as many years, and she's tired now. The king kisses her hand and tells her that it'll be a boy this time, and he's never been surer about something in his life. The king tells her that he saw a dream in which a boy was born with a crown already on his head as all the dragons roared as one. Meanwhile, Prince Daemon leads out his gold cloaks, the city watchguards, out into the streets with a mission to eliminate all the criminals in the city before the king's tournament starts. He starts cutting off the arms of thieves, the genitals of the rapists, and the head of the murderers, passing all these judgments himself in an unparalleled display of brutality. A whole cart wagon was needed to roll away the severed organs of the criminals. Obviously, this doesn't sit well with the king's council, who protest that this could have been avoided. The king tells him that he's free to implement the king's laws, but anything like last night will be answerable the next time. After all this unfolds, the king inaugurates the tournament. He also announces to the loud cheer of the crowd that Queen Aemma has started her labor. The Tournament of the Knights begins as brutally as it was bloody. Daemon wins his first duel and then gets challenged by Sir Criston of the House Cole. As the duel between Cole and Daemon continues, the king is informed by the Maester Mellows that there's been some complication during the queen's pregnancy. The king goes inside to find the queen howling in pain and drenched in blood. The Maester tells the king that they've given her as much milk of the poppy as they could, without harming the baby. The maester says that there may be a way to save one of the two, rather than letting both die. He suggests that there's a technique taught at the Citadel in which you cut directly into the womb and bring the baby out. The king reluctantly agrees, and in doing so, the queen dies a horrible, painful death, while the son of the king is born. However, the joy doesn't last long, as the newborn also dies not long after. The queen and the child are buried with the proper royal custom. The dead bodies are placed on a wooden stake, and a dragon breathes fire onto the stake, setting it on fire, after Rhaenyra gives it the order by saying, "Dracarys?" A very somber moment. Subsequently, after the burial, chaos ensues as the debate about who the next heir should be takes heat. Lord Hightower says that Daemon is not suitable to being an heir, as he is self-destructive and does not have the patience to taking such an important role. The Hand of the King puts forth the name of Rhaenyra for the new heir, which doesn't sit well with the other lords of the council. They're of the view that no girl has sat on the Iron Throne for more than 100 years and that it should be kept this way. The king, still reeling from the loss of his wife and son, yells at them all angrily and tells them to stop, which puts an end to this conversation. In the middle of the night after the funeral, Daemon goes to a brothel where an orgy is taking place. He is cheered to give a speech, as if to celebrate him being left as the sole heir to the king. He gives a toast to Prince Balon, the dead newborn, and dubs him as the heir for a day. The news of this reaches Lord Hightower, and he reports it to the king. The King Viserys immediately calls Daemon in front of himself as he sits on the Iron Throne. The king asks him if he said it, and Daemon replies that we all mourn in our own way. The king and his brother have a huge spat, and the king sends Daemon into exile and orders him to go the Vale and be with his wife there. The next day, Rhaenyra is sworn in as the new heir to the throne, as all the lords of the Second Kingdoms pledge their allegiance to her. This concludes the first episode of House of the Dragon Season 1. The second episode of House of the Dragon Season 1 is titled The Rogue Prince. The episode starts off with Lord Corlys barging into the council meeting and demanding from the king that something should be done regarding the pirates. He tells the council that they've attacked 4 ships now, and the last one was sailing with Lord Corlys's banner. He asks the king to go to war against these pirates, but the king and the Hand, Lord Hightower, do not approve of it. The king says that he cannot afford to go to war with the free cities, but Lord Corlys says that these crab feeders are not the free cities, but rather acting on their own. Rhaenyra, who was in the room as well, tells the king that he has dragon riders and that he should just send them. The king and the Hand outright dismiss Rhaenyra's idea, while Lord Corlys appreciates it. The Hand says to the king that maybe the princess's talents might be of use somewhere else, and the king sends her out of the room to oversee the induction of a new knight into the Kingsguard, as one of the 7 knights had just died. Rhaenyra stands on a balcony as knights hopeful of making the Kingsguard introduce themselves one by one. Rhaenyra asks if any of these knights have actual combat experience, and Sir Criston Cole steps up and introduces himself. In the end, Rhaenyra ends up choosing Sir Criston, the son of the steward of the Lord of Blackhaven, over knights from important families. A bit later, the king conducts an audience with Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenys. Lord Corlys apologizes for coming on a bit strong earlier in the small council meeting. The king says that he does appreciate Corlys's sentiments, but as king, he has to avoid an all-out war until it is absolutely unavoidable. Lord Corlys says that the queen has just passed away, leaving the king with no male children, while a girl has been named heir to the throne for the first time in history, so a show of strength is necessary. Corlys suggests that the king marries his and Rhaenys' daughter, Lynna, and combines the strength of the last of the 2 remaining great Valyrian houses, as this would be a great show of strength. After a bit, the king meets Lynna, who is actually very young. The king, hesitant of the idea at first, eventually takes her out for a stroll in the garden to get to know her better. The king is spending time with Alicent in his chambers when Lord Hightower comes into his room and tells him that Daemon has taken the egg of a baby dragon from its cradle. He leaves a note behind saying that Daemon is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne and he is to take a second wife in the tradition of Old Valyria. Daemon also invites the king to his wedding and tells him that he is to take Lady Mysaria as his second wife. When Lord Corlys asks who Daemon's new wife is, Lord Hightower crudely replies, "His whore." Rhaenyra asks the Dragon Keeper who brought this news to the king about which dragon egg Daemon stole. The man says that it was Dreamfire's egg, the same egg that the king had chosen for Prince Baelon. Angered, the king decides to travel to Dragonstone and bring justice to Daemon himself. But Lord Hightower says that he cannot allow it, and that the king should instead send the hand of the king to Dragonstone to arrest Daemon. After a long voyage, Lord Hightower reaches Dragonstone and is greeted by Daemon and his gold cloaks at the stairs leading to Dragonstone's castle at the top of the mountain. A standoff ensues when Lord Hightower demands Daemon's surrender and return of the dragon's egg, which Daemon outright refuses. Matters escalate, which ends in shields being drawn. Daemon's dragon, perched on a nearby mountain, gives out a loud and threatening screech. Lord Hightower, scared of the consequences, tells his men to immediately sheathe their swords. As bloodshed looks almost certain, Rhaenyra suddenly flies in on Dragonback to save the day. She walks up to her uncle and tells her that he's sitting in her castle and that she's the real princess of Dragonstone. She tells him that she's standing right in front of him, and if he wants to be the future king, he's going to have to kill her. Daemon, left with no choice but to back down, tosses the dragon egg to Rhaenyra before walking back into the castle. After Rhaenyra returns, the king reprimands her for her actions. He reminds her that she's the heir of the kingdom, and she cannot go around risking her life like that. Rhaenyra, however, is quick to point out that she was able to recover the egg without any bloodshed, which Sir Otto wouldn't have been able to do so alone. The king sees her ample reasoning and calms down. He then tells her how much he misses her mother, and how she's left a gap in their lives. He then says that he's going to have to remarry for the kingdom, but no one will be able to replace her mother. Meanwhile, he also asks Lord Lionel Strong for advice. He tells him about the proposal from Lord Corlys. Lord Strong also advises him that it's a good idea to match the two powerful Valyrian houses. The king, however, says that there's just one problem, that she's only 12. Afterwards, the king calls the council meeting and announces that he's going to remarry to propagate his line. Everyone expects him to announce that he's going to marry Laena Velaryon, but shocking everyone there, he instead announces that he's going to be marrying Lady Alicent Hightower. This angers Lord Corlys, who storms out of the room. Rhaenyra, also not knowing how to react to this, leaves the room, leaving her father calling after her. Lord Corlys, feeling betrayed by the king, instead goes knocking at the door of Daemon. He tells him everything and tells him how the king refuses to help him against the pirates terrorizing his shores. He says to Daemon that he thinks they are both cut out of the same cloth. He brings Daemon's attention to the trouble in the Stepstones. He tells him that a Myrish prince is feeling sailors to the crabs, and if he continues like this, House Velaryon will lose its very important trade route. Lord Corlys tells Daemon that he has a chance to prove his worth in the Stepstones and shut the mouths of any who doubt him. This concludes the second episode of House of the Dragon Season 1.